Hello everyone, how are you? I hope you're all doing excellent. Today we're doing a long-awaited mod on the RX7. I know you've all been waiting for it and I'm super excited for it too. So let's get started. Jeff, can you please do me the honors and hand me the new package?
Yep.
Fresh, genuine OEM parts. Oh baby. Does it go this way? It goes this way. Look at that. We haven't had that for years. Check this out. Oh! Oh! Man, that is nice. All right, everybody, so that does it for today. Thank you for watching another episode of... just kidding. Today we are working on the power steering. Actually, we're in the future, so we worked on it previously. It's been a 2-week project, and it's still leaking. But we did get it to work at the end of the video. So please follow along with our little journey. Wait to the very end, because if you do anything that we did the way we did it before you watch till the end, it's not going to work. But we did finally get it working. So enjoy. And now back to Past Thomas. Today's project on the FC is going to be related to the power steering. Now, I put a video up a long time ago where I got a power steering pump from an MR2 electric, and I got a system custom made from a local hydraulic shop to be able to connect it to the FC's power steering rack. Unfortunately, a lot of stuff has changed since then. I was originally going to run the cooling loop that goes in front of the air conditioning condenser in the stock setup to keep the power steering fluid cool, and after installing the aftermarket intercooler and everything, there's no room for that to be mounted. So I had to cut that out, which means I'll need to modify the lines that I made, possibly make some new ones. Also, when we were installing the engine, we nicked one of the hard lines on the power steering rack itself. So my first task is going to be taking that off and trying to find or make a replacement. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Okay, here we are in the engine bay, and down here, this is where these 3 holes here, one of those is going to get plugged off. This is where the power steering pump feeds into the rack. And just behind it, if you can see, let me zoom in the camera and put down this flashlight for a moment. Right there, there are 2 hard lines that come out, and they connect into the rack itself. There's one running right there. And this one right here, we unfortunately got caught on the bolts that come out of the bottom of the oil pan. So right here it's kinked, and as it goes into the rack, it's kinked. It's pinched enough to the point where I'm fairly certain it will have a leak. And even if it doesn't, it's going to be a part of restricting the flow of the fluid in the rack, so that's not going to work. So I need to get that off, and as you can see from me holding the camera and the flashlight, it's a very, very tight fit down there. So that's probably going to take me a good deal of time. Once I get it off, I'll get back to show you what it's looking like. Okay, so real quick, I got some good, bad news. I mean, it's good news. I am unable to take that hard line off without dropping the subframe. And when I was down there trying to work on it with the flashlight up close, there's actually no visible cracks. I was able to tap it back into place with a hammer and some soft wood, and it seems like it might work. And might as well hook up the power steering system the way I think it's going to work, pressurize it and test it, because if it's working, that's a big obstacle I don't have to overcome. If it is leaking, we're still back in the same square, and I will drop the subframe, but fingers crossed we don't have to get to that. So next thing I want to do is figure out where I'm going to mount this little monster. So this is the electric power steering pump. Needs to go down to the lines down here. There's a lot going on in here, so I'm not sure. Now, stock could be mounted right along the side of the engine block with some pulleys. With our new intercooler piping and everything we've run, we can't really do that. But I'm thinking right here behind this coolant reservoir, there's some space and there's some brackets and so on they can mount it to. It's kind of heavy, but there are mounting bracket here, one down here, and then there's actually a threaded hole right on the top. So if I can somehow get it wedged in here and use some of these holes to pass some bolts through, it should securely there, and then route the hoses back down there. So let's see. Okay, so this location actually looks really great. As you can see, it's fit in there quite well. I've got the feed and return lines facing out front so I can angle and bring things around. I'm probably going to remove this bracket for the electrical connections, but I can tuck it up under here nice and neatly to route the wiring. And also, it's resting on a post down there, so I have it not mounted at all, but it is in there rather firmly. What's great about that is I can test everything with it there and then build some brackets to get it secured in place. So next thing is I'm going to see if I can modify with these connections and just use some fuel line and hose clamp it on here and see if I can run some lines into the power steering rack. Okay. So I was able to transfer one of these ends off this hydraulic line. I split it with a razor, pulled it out, and then with a little bit of WD-40 help, able to push this in here, and it is in there, man. So I'll probably still use a hose clamp just for a little bit extra. Now I'm going to go ahead and run a test length and then get this cut off. Okay, so another great result from the placement of this. So here it is. Bring it underneath here. Let's see, where are we? Okay. Right here is the connection. Run it along here. There's a great pass-through just to the right of the radiator. And then here it comes through right here. And bringing it right down here. So I'm going to be able to mark off the length with a little bit of play and then get that other connector side and see if we can tap it in there. Alright, I got the business end hooked up there, and I actually also installed the other fitting adapter, which adapts that metric 12 by 1.25, I'm pretty sure, to this is a GIC, which is another type of fitting like AN. As I'm looking at it, don't quote me on the M12 by 1.25. I think that's the size to plug this hole, which looks like a different size for those. Now it's time to mount the power steering reservoir. This location here looks pretty good. This is some hose I have to do a return to the inlet on the power steering pump over here. And this is the pressure return that's going to come from the power steering rack. I can put this right down in here. Plenty of room. And there's some nice holes over here where I can do some zip ties for now and then a better mounting system. But get it ready for testing all of this. So we're going to go ahead and put that together. I'm going to have to run out soon and get the M12 by 1.25 bolt to block off that third port in the steering rack. I'm going to get some heater hose and I'm probably going to get some wire because things are moving smoothly with this, which is unusual. And I want to wire up a relay and see if we can energize this thing and get power steering. So pretty excited. So let's move on to the next part. Okay, so I just finished up a little parts run. Amazingly, I think I have everything I need to at least get a test situation with the system running. So I need to work a little bit with the wiring, get it wired up, wire up the relay, wire up a switch, get the plumbing finalized, well, you know, mocked up, but the fittings tightened down, and I mean, maybe able to fire this up and see if I got power steering. So I'm getting pretty excited. Let me go ahead and I think I'll start with securing up the plumbing, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so I jinxed myself. I said, yeah, things are going good. I think I've got everything I need. This is supposedly the size bolt that was going to block off the extra port from the power steering rack. It is not the right size. And or that port I have is damaged. Let's see, grab the flashlight and I'll show you. And maybe it's just not going to grab on down there, and I need to find another solution. But the good news is that stores are still open, so maybe, even though it's getting late in the day, I can still do this. So right down here, you can see it kind of cracked off, and that's from tightening a previous fitting. But that previous fitting that ran to the old cooling loop, it's still tightened in there. So I'm going to go find that old piece and see if I can just take that fitting as a reference and find something to block that off. Okay, so I have here the original loop. Now this right here is the fitting that goes into the steering rack right there, and this is the bolt. And I don't know, it just looks quite a deal wider in diameter than what I got, so let's see if it'll focus. So anyway, I'm just gonna cut this off, see if I can free this up, and then take that as a reference. We'll see if I can get what I need. Okay, I was wrong. It's a Sunday. The hardware stores are closed, but that's okay. We can pick that last little bit up tomorrow. Right now what I'm going to do is go ahead and, like I said, finish the plumbing, tighten everything down, run the power. We can at least see if that all works. And then tomorrow, take a quick trip to the hardware store, button it up, and maybe drive around with some power steering. So let me get to work on this wiring. So the next thing I need to do is take this power coupling for the pump itself and get it connected to power in the system here. Now usually these would be used in tandem by the MR2 system, which is where the pump comes from, to regulate its power based on the speed of the vehicle and so on and so forth. We're not going to be able to accomplish that, so this isn't needed. This is just power and ground, and it's going to be operated by a switch. So at low speeds you turn it on, you can drive around normally, you get on the freeway or whatever up to speed, you can flip it off. But these blade connectors that are in here, oops, are much larger than the stuff you can normally buy. So I need to pull those out. I'm just going to go ahead and splice the wires in directly and solder those together. Okay, so here's this big mess of wires right here. What I have here is a relay, and this relay I'm going to have to replace because the wires coming off of it are only, what does it say, 16 gauge. And these are 10 gauge wires coming into the power here, but I've got the output from the relay just in here on a blade connector, so hopefully I can easily replace that or whatever needs to be when I get a stronger relay. Then also I have this grounded here to the chassis, and that is with one of these beautiful, which I'll link below, this great kit of these solder already inside butt connectors. They're great. And then I have the relay grounded, and I have a trigger wire and a bunch of spare wire. Goes over to a power junction over here. So if I touch this wire to the power junction, hopefully that pump will turn on if I've wired everything correctly and it's working. So there we go. And oh, hear that? Yep, that is working. So what I can do with this is use the relay for testing and getting everything hooked up. And these wires I can run, because I've put them on blade connectors here, in and get the switch hooked up inside. And then that way, when we get our final components, hopefully tomorrow, we'll be able to hook this up and get going. Okay, so I'm back. It's the next day. I got the parts I think I need. Let me show you real quick. This big black bolt into the steering column. It's an M16 by 1.5, and I tapered the the end with the flapper wheel on an angle grinder, and it seems to fit in there. But I was just pressurizing the system to see if there are any leaks, and if you can see from automatic transmission fluid everywhere, one of the lines I made busted. And I'm not sure if it's because I made the line bad, which is what it looks like, because it's pretty mangled here. Let's see if it'll focus. Anyway, you can see it there. So looks like a bloodbath down here. Don't worry, it's just ATF fluid. But I'm going to go ahead and try and remake this end and try it again. If it doesn't work, we pull the parts out and drive it with no power steering until I can get real hydraulic lines. But these lines should be able to handle the pressure, but maybe I'll have to get something stronger. So anyway, I'm going to try and remake this line, and we'll give it test number 2. Okay, so I remade the line, and it does seem to be doing much better, and the pump even sounds better. I think that that was like cracked, the line or something, the whole time, because now the pump sounds much healthier. Before it was making all kinds of noise, and I've just been pressurizing it for a while. And luckily no leaks, spews, and bubbles are starting to come up through the fluid reservoir, so that's a good sign. Now I am powering it up manually because let me show you what happened to that small relay I was talking about last night. Here's this little relay, and it just could not handle the power. If you see that, that was all starting to melt there. This is the power supply cable as well. You can see it was melting there. This relay was smoking. So I did order a new heavy duty relay. It'll be here tomorrow, hopefully. And what we can do then is get it wired up permanently. But again, I'm testing to see if that bolt that I put in there is going to hold pressure. And so far it is. If you see any liquid down there, it's because of the spills from earlier. So that's holding, so that's good. Doesn't look too pretty sticking out there, but it's way easier to get at than if I mounted it flush. And like I said, it's holding so far. So now the plan is to drop the car down, because it's up right now, so I could service it a little bit, and turn the wheel and see how it feels with power steering. So wish me luck. Nope, no power steering. The line burst again. So these PTFE fuel lines I was using right here, they're not going to cut it. The fittings, maybe the hose itself can handle it, but the fittings I have for it, they don't hold the pressure with that kind of rail. So I'm going to go ahead and get this type of hose, made it up to that again at the same shop where I got the original thing made. That's going to take a little while. So for now, it's time to go back to the drawing board, get the correct wiring, get the correct hoses, get everything replumbed, and we're working on some brackets to hold this thing in place. And then I'll be back in the blink of an eye for you, but for me probably in about a week, and try and finish this up. So hopefully you're learning from what I've done wrong and show you how it works when it finally does. Stay tuned. For me right now, I got to clean up all this ATF fluid. Alright, so it's been a week for me, and I got the parts I need. I have this hydraulic line right here, made with those same fittings, same length. So I'm going to go ahead and use this instead of what exploded on me before, which was just fuel line. And also, I got a heavy duty relay, which hopefully won't fry, right here. So I found a nice mounting spot for it with the other factory relays as well. So I'll pop this off and show you what that looks like, because I got to make the connections on it as well. And for a switch to turn the power steering on, I actually found in my box of things a switch here, which is for the stock option fog lights. And I would love to have those fog lights, but where the intercooler piping goes, I can't fit them anyway. So I actually wired this in. I have my fuse box right back here. So it's fused, has a little link, goes through here, and then runs up to the relay in the front of the car. So that's actually nice and handy. So next thing is getting this power steering pump situated back in here where we wanted to mount it, and making some brackets. So that should be pretty fun. Alright, so I climbed underneath there and drew out this kind of crazy looking bracket. So I'll show you where this goes. This is going to mount along 2 bolts that go where the stock oil cooler mounts in, and then this will come up at a bend and mount on the bottom of the power steering pump. So now is to trace this out, get it cut, and then start shaping the metal.
What happened?
Sparks.
Okay.
We're gonna need a bigger hat.
Bigger hat.
All right. Okay, let's start with that. Let's go test fit this bad boy.
Sounds good.
Oh shit. Oh yeah, nice.
Do you need a trim or anything?
No, I think we're good. I need to just move this a little bit, but now I can you hand me a Sharpie so I can try and mark these
Yeah.
bolt holes?
Here, coming down right there.
Okay.
You can't really see where that mount is from up here, but that's good. Means if you can't see it, it's hidden nicely.
Yeah. So, alright, so I got the first bracket in place, just tightening it up. And show you where it's at for anyone interested. So here's the bottom of the power steering pump. We have this bolt. It's actually a through bolt, so there's a nut on the other side. And then it goes down here and mounts 2 points where the studs come through for the oil cooler. So this is probably going to be upside down, but that's the only way I can get under here to show you. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and tighten this all up, and then we're going to work on the mount for the top. Also, if you can see if I can show you. So there's another stud right here that the other mounting bracket is resting on, so it helps hold it in place. So there's 2 points here, and then we're going to get a 3rd point on the top. So that thing's actually really solidly mounted in there without another bracket. probably can see we're going to need another one, but since we're still testing it, we don't even know if this is going to work. Before we get further into mounting it, we're going to go ahead and hook it up with our new hydraulic line and see if we can actually get this running, and hopefully no explosion disasters like happened the first time. So I'm going to work on getting this wired up. Alright. So I'm hooking up 8-gauge wire to the power input for this power steering pump, because as you saw earlier in the video, the previous relay and wiring were not cutting it. Just going to clamp down these butt connectors, and I'm going to put some heat shrink over them once we get the length decided. For right now, just getting these clamped together, and then I'll show you the wiring for the relay, which is right here. Okay, looks good. By the way, this wire is 8-gauge wire. It's from Install Gear. I got it on Amazon. I'll leave the link in the description below, because usually if you've done anything, you know wire in small amounts from your auto parts store and whatever can be very expensive. This was really reasonable. It's 25 feet of 8-gauge wire. So you can use this for all kinds of stuff. You can use it for ignition wire. You can use it for creating strong grounds, engine grounds. So I was really happy to find this. So we'll leave the link in the description below so you guys can take advantage of that as well. And yeah, it looks like to be really great stuff. I think it's designed to be like speaker wire, but it's really nice. Or not speaker wire, but maybe amplifier wires for subwoofers and stuff. But yeah, it's good for us. Okay, good. I know these vice grips are not the exact correct tool, but they work so well when you're dealing with large gauge wire like this that I just can't ignore the ease of use. There we go. Okay. Heat shrink. Heat.
And shrink.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good looking connection. So go ahead and ground this to the chassis right here. I've already checked it for continuity before the explosion happened, so it's a good grounding. Good grounding point. So we'll get that grounded up and then wire in the power side. Okay, so here's our relay. Nice easy mounting location. So this relay is a heavy duty 120 amp. Don't necessarily need that level of amperage, but what I do need to put the right kind of wires are these bolt down ring connectors. So I can put whatever size I need on there so I can accommodate this 8-gauge wire. So these are just the trigger wires. This goes into the cabin, to the fog light switch. This is grounded to the chassis right here. Those are not going to carry any power, so that's why they're just simple little connectors there. Just needs a little 12 volts, very low draw. I have it on a 7.5 amp fuse just in case. So basically, I'm going to take this from here to here, and then this will go to power. So doing it with the vice grips also really helps because you can do it with just two hands. You get it in there, you get it held in there, you insert here, hold, and squeeze, and then your connection's there. Let's go ahead and route this where we want it. Down under here. Since the 8-gauge ring terminals are so big, had to make a little washer sandwich. hold it all together, but should work just fine. So get this tightened down. Like so. There we go. So that'll go down in there like that. Looks good. And so now just need the final connection to power.
So Thomas is underneath there hooking up all the lines. We are kind of at a little bit of a stopping point with the power because we need to get another couple washers that we need, and then another little power ring thingy, and then we can continue on there. But we're just going to get as much hooked up as possible right now that we can drop the car and then just hook up like 2 wires, and then hopefully no explosion. So that's where we're at.
What?
Another trip to O'Reilly's?
Another trip to O'Reilly's.
Yeah, we're here. They know us by name now.
Isn't that their logo or slogan? I mean,
We help more garage.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So we swung by our parents' house because they got free food and some good tools, some good washers to connect this stuff. So just about to finish up getting power connected here, and then we'll try and fire it up. Okay, now I only have a small piece of.
Where's your shrinker thing?
It's on there. It's all the way down there, but it's short, so try not to light it on fire too far. There we go. Oh, that's beautiful.
Soldering with a
Okay. So Jeff just handed me a 3/8 socket to do a 10mm nut, and I didn't know that 3/8 was equal to 10mm. So
If it's a 6-point,
if it's a 6-point,
is it a 6-point or 12-point?
It's a 12-point.
12-point.
Oh, okay.
But now we can lose all of our 3/8 sockets and wrenches. All right, so this should be the last connection for the relay. So what we have here is power to the pump. Pump is grounded. We have power running from here and our signal wires, or our trigger wires. So I'm going to go ahead and reinstall the relay right here. And then we'll dry fire it real quick just to check it, but I got to reconnect the battery terminals. Okay.
The pump?
If something bursts, that's
No.
what we'll be filming.
There's no liquid in there. We're just seeing if the pump's going to turn on right now, if we wired everything correctly. And you can film Mom's face, because that's funny too.
It's working. It's working.
Okay, we're back from my folks. Good news is, got the relay and power system for the pump wired up. It's working so good. Bad news is, and I'm sure a lot of people have been yelling at the screen so far, I plumbed the power steering rack connections wrong. So anyway, I'm going to do some quick modifications to get the line set up the correct way, but I don't know if I have the right fitting for the return, and if I don't, that means another week of waiting, but I'm going to see what I can do. We'll see. So here's the basics of what happened. The M16 1.5 bolt was plugging the return. That is a low pressure return where the fluid needs to go back into the reservoir. So when we powered up the pump, it was just under a tremendous amount of load, and then it couldn't return, and it was like turn the wheel one way and then we couldn't turn it back to the right, and we were having trouble not getting the power steering. So I just double checked my routing, and whatever write-up or diagram I looked at was not correct. So now I got lucky. I did order a M16 1.5 to a -6 fitting, so I'll make some better looking lines here shortly. Until then, what I'm going to do is go ahead and use one of these fittings which came from the oil catch can kit, to, it happens to be, I got lucky, it's M16 to barb, so I'm going to go ahead and plug this in and see if we can do that. Next thing I'm going to do is I actually have a T-fitting, because both those lines that I have running the other way are for pressurizing the rack. So I'm going to split the T in, get those both hooked up, make those new hydraulic lines, and then I'll show you how it's all hooked up. Okay, so just finishing up the edited hydraulic lines here. You know, I'm thinking that since we had the return plugged, the fuel lines I used with those fittings probably would have been fine. I think that just generated so much pressure because I had it set up wrong that it burst them. But this is going to be the T fitting for the pressure, since there are two of those. So luckily I had these fittings and I was able to repress in these. So we're going to get this set back up, and I think we found a solution for the return. So despite some setbacks, we've got the wiring set up right, we've got a great bracket to hold it in place. Now this is just the last step, so let's get this put in there and see if we can get power steering finally. Okay, attempt number 3. Down here we have the high pressure line coming in, it's teed in, it's providing pressure to both those. We have our little fitting here going up to return in the reservoir. So one more time, we're going to try to fill this with ATF fluid and see if we get power steering. Okay.
Okay, so everything is hooked up. Unfortunately, we do still have a little bit of a power steering leak right down there. However, it is working. And so Thomas, you can go ahead and fire it up and turn it real quick so they can see. Yeah, see, everything's working. Just a leak right there. So that fitting isn't going to work. We do have the proper one on the way. It'll be here in 2 days. You said the proper fitting?
Yeah, we'll be here on Wednesday.
Be here on Wednesday, and then hopefully that leak will go away and everything will be solved.
Yeah, so what a journey. But we did it.
We did.
Kind of.
It's leaking, but the system is working. You have power steering, and we're going to leave a huge ATF fluid anywhere we go for the next 2 days.
Yeah.
So we got to carry a couple of containers with us, but it works.
Absolutely.
So that's the end of this episode, and we will see you all in the next one.